So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is András Igari. I'm a junior analyst of Hateful Research Institute from Hungary, Budapest. As you can see, my presentation is about the functional area concept as an entry point to the development of rural regions, focusing on large lake regions. I've chosen this topic because I would like to present you some main findings of ESPON Lakes project, which are related to the understanding of the challenges and possible development opportunities of functional areas. My presentation will be divided into three parts. Firstly, I will focus on the changing role of the regional typologies and functional areas in European cohesion policy. Then I will present the main challenges of the large lake regions based on the ESPON Lakes project. And finally, I will highlight some possible development paths to address to these kind of regions. As you can see, my topic isn't about the shrinking regions, but it is my hope that our results will not only be relevant for the large lake regions, but they will also serve as a useful experience for functional areas in general, and especially for rural regions. There is a long history of addressing geographical specificities in European cohesion policy. Several types of regional typology have been developed in recent decades. The delimitation of these specific areas was in most cases based on one or more indicators or complex indicators or the special geographical characteristics, and was mainly targeted at NUTS 3 level. The reform of the regional policy in 1988 to 1989 brought a number of changes. On the one hand, it made regional policy one of the most important policies, increased its share from the EU budget. On the other hand, more integrated approach than before was introduced with 5 priorities. Two of them focused on the targeted development of regions facing industrial depression, and another priority focusing on rural areas. In addition, coastal, outermost, and border regions, as you can see in the graph, receive smaller amounts of targeted aid, initially in the form of community initiative programs, and then, over time, integrated into the mainstream objectives. Later, the sparsely populated regions also receive specific funding. As shown in the graph, the combined share of the specific types of regions in the EU funds allocated to cohesion policy has gradually decreased since the early 1990s. Most regional typologies disappeared from this, and after 2006, only border, outermost, and sparsely populated regions receive specific funding. At the same time, these types of regions have continued to feature prominently in EU policy discourse. Several ESPON studies have addressed the specific challenges and potential development opportunities of different regional typologies. Furthermore, the Territorial Agenda 2020 and the Territorial Agenda 2030 also mention a number of specific geographic areas, all of which face specific challenges. At the same time, a new approach and the methodology has emerged in European policy discourse alongside regional typologies targeting NUTS 3 level areas. These so-called functional regions not just typify existing regions according to their geographical, social, or economic characteristics, but focus on spatial networks and flows. In this case, the focus is on the different functional links and soft cooperation that define new types of territories. It means that not anymore only typifying existing regions, but they try to define new types of territorial units. And now I would like to go through and talking about the large lake regions as my main topic, because these kind of regions can also be considered as a kind of special geographical areas, and we can both analyze them as a regional typologies and also as a functional areas. But what are these large lake regions and why are we researching them? Although there is no standardized definition of large lakes, but the current European typology defines the so-called very large lakes as lakes larger than 100 square kilometers. These lakes are surrounded by functionally complex areas in which there are complex networks of different actors and multiple partially overlapping functional areas. And these regions are especially rich in social and cultural values. So we analyzed them in ESPON project, which involved 3 stakeholders and 3 contractors aimed to research these large lake regions. In the next presentation, Károly will show how the project was carried out from the stakeholders' point of view, while I would like to present the main results of the project from the contractor's perspective. The lead partner was the Spatial Foresight, while Friedrich Alexander University from Germany and the Hateful Research Institute from Hungary were also involved in this project. The research was structured as follows. In the chapter 1 and 4, as you can see, we use a cross-cutting European perspective on large lake regions, and in the chapter 2 and 3, we did a detailed analysis of the 3 stakeholder regions based on quantitative and qualitative data. These observed large lake regions was the regions related to Lake Balaton, Lake Constance, and Lake Vänern. In the following part of my presentation, I would like to show these 3 stakeholder regions, their functional links, their inner geographical, demographic, and economic diversity, and the main structural and cooperation characteristics of them. Finally, I will change back to the European perspective, and I will highlight some possible development paths to address these regions. First of all, with regard to the large lake regions, it is important to underline the basic fact that it is not easy to integrate these territorial units into the traditional NUTS structure. Each of the examined large lake regions are divided between several NUTS 2 or NUTS 3 regions. Furthermore, the Lake Constance lies on the national borders of 3 countries, and as you can see, the lake region also contains the Principality of Liechtenstein. So the region, so the lake region of Lake Constance involves 4 countries. Beyond the territorial fragmentation, it can be seen that depending on the delimitation chosen, the territorial scope is different in each lake. Lakeshore areas, drainage basin areas, 50-kilometer buffer zones, or existing territorial cooperation arrangements all cover different territorial units. Moving beyond territorial fragmentation, let's look at the relationships and networks that shape each region. As you can see, the 3 regions are characterized by different transport networks and have different population potential. The population potential means that the number of people living within 45 minutes by road. So while the Lake Constance region has a high population potential and it is connected by dense transportation networks by land and water, in the case of Lake Balaton and Lake Vänern, have a lower population potential and just with a large city far from the lakes. Budapest is here, and Gothenburg in the case of Lake Vänern. Which means that the population potential is quite low in the case of Lake Balaton and the Lake Vänern, but the situation is different in the 2 lake regions. As for the Lake Balaton, the lake is surrounded by a dense network of small towns and villages with a few medium-sized centers. whereas the Lake Van are surrounded by a sparsely populated rural area with a few small urban centers. Among the functional links, commuting patterns and labor market areas have been addressed separately. As you can see, we only analyzed in that case just the Lake Balaton and Lake Van region. As there are no major cities on the lakeshore of Lake Balaton and Lake Van, the municipalities in the lake regions are attracted by several different smaller centers. These functional links therefore further divide the lake regions. But in the case of Lake Balaton, for example, there is also significant seasonality in labor market. In summer, during summer, the lakeshore attracts workers in tourism and related sectors. For this reason, in the case of Lake Balaton, the lakeshore area forms a kind of functional integrated unit during the summer period. In addition to the diversity of functional links and administrative borders, the regions have a very diverse natural, social, and economic characteristics. Although the environments of the different large lake regions are fundamentally different, as you can see in the land use pattern map, which showed that while in Lake Constance, surrounded by a highly urbanized area, Lake Balaton surrounded by mostly agricultural areas, and while the Lake Vanarn is surrounded by mostly green areas. But they have both of the lake regions have a common characteristics that way that they have a particularly rich natural value. The lakes or parts of them and the significant part of their surroundings are under various international and national protection. Their protection is paramount importance because they are an important part of the ecosystem, and their protection is of social and economic value. So it means that all of the examined large lake regions are pools of natural values. If we shifted to the demographic pattern of each lake regions, we can see that the analyzed regions are very diverse demographically. This topic is maybe partially interesting in the case of the population, because as you can see, each regions have different population patterns. What does it mean? In the case of Lake Balaton, you can see that in the lakeshore areas are affected by a massive depopulation, indicated with red. I'm so sorry. Massive aging of population with a high share of old age from the population, while the peripheral areas of the Lake Balaton region affected by the depopulation, indicated with this dotted pattern. You can see it here. As we can see the Lake Constance region, we can see that it can be characterized by a balanced population structure and population growth, indicated with yellow, and this cross-hatched pattern. Finally, in the case of Lake Vanarn, differences between urban and rural areas clearly stand out, while the larger cities and their commuting zones have a young age structure with a population growth, indicated with blue and this cross-hatches pattern. The rural areas have a strongly aging population, indicated with red, and there are no population decreasing or increasing in these areas in the last decade. Finally, in terms of economic development, again, there are significant differences between the large lake regions. To have comparison, the three maps are drawn on a uniform scale indicating the extent of the differences between the three regions. While the Lake Constance region is considered highly developed and Lake Vanner shows significant urban-rural differences, the lakeshore of the Lake Balaton is a little bit more developed than the other parts of the region. So it means that in the case of Lake Balaton, the economic production is a little bit higher in the lakeshore areas than the peripheral areas of the lake region. It's partly due to the intensive tourism, which, in addition to being economically advantageous, is also the cause of many environmental and social conflicts. In conclusion, the three analyzed regions are very diverse in the terms of their regional structure. While in lakeshore of Lake Balaton, the intensive tourism cause economic advantage and social and then the environmental conflicts. In Lake Constance region, we can highlight the intensive use and pressure on land. Then in Lake Vanner is an inner periphery without significant economic and social centers. Furthermore, all regions are characterized by being part of a different administrative structure. Lake Constance faces the most challenging situation with 4 different countries being part of the region. Integrated development is of course very important, play a very important role to manage these areas in a coherent way, but because of the diverse situation, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach towards integrated development. This is why there is a need for place-based approaches in the case of lake regions. It also seems that the general challenge of integrated territorial development is to bridge administrative borders. On the basis of this, we have examined how the regions are progressing towards integrated territorial planning. As you can see, the different regions stand in different stages of integrated spatial development. The planning on the level of the lake region is weaker in the Vanner case than in the Balaton and Constance cases, where spatial planning and development is at least tackled institutionally on the level of the lake region. In the Balaton region, integrated spatial planning plays the strongest role. There is an existing regional development plan and a comprehensive coordination. Finally, we have identified various policy options that can help the integrated development of the large lake regions. Several types of approaches at the different spatial levels have been used. The ones marked with dashed lines, yeah, you can see here and here, are highlighted because they are related to the above mentioned parts of the presentation. On the one hand, the actions of increase the use of integrated tools within EU cohesion policy and the support cooperation beyond national borders implies that existing regional policy instruments should be better used to develop these kind of regions. On the other hand, the inclusion of the large lake regions as pilot actions in the territorial agenda 2030 could facilitate the policy discourse on this type of regions. These objectives could also be available for different functional areas, such as rural areas and shrinking regions. However, I would like to make a special mention of integrated land lake management. This is, of course, not applicable to all types of regions or functional areas, as it focuses specifically on the land-lake interactions. However, it's a good example of how a challenge in a special area can be addressed from a new perspective and an opportunity to capture and co-manage the functional links between lake and land. So, in a nutshell, the aim of this policy option is the following. There is a need to bridge the gap between terrestrial and lake-based planning to develop the lake and its surroundings together and to address the challenges of land-lake interaction. It can be based on integrated coastal zone management and on the ecosystem approach. It has 2 possible starting points. On the one hand, the application of management principles at lake level, and on the other hand, the collective elaboration of common management guidelines for large lakes at cross-lake level.
I'm sorry, Mr. Igari, could you please get to sorry.
Yeah.
We need to have time for the questions and all that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So my presentation concludes with the following. However, the role of the regional typologies in European cohesion policy has declined over the past decades. The concept of functional areas is a new approach for the development of regions with special characteristics, especially for shrinking rural regions. As I mentioned, the large lake regions are a special type of functional areas with a complex network and functionally overlapping functional areas, and they are mostly fragmented by administrative subdivisions and very varied areas, but they are rich in social and cultural values which connected these areas together. And finally, we have identified some special policy options that can help to integrated development of these large lake regions. And it will be important if you can shift in the perspectives from the negligibility to center of attention and from the lake as a barrier to catalyst of integrated development. This could also be an important objective for all other functional areas. I hope that my presentation highlighted some opportunities which could be entry points for integrated development of functional areas, and especially for shrinking rural regions. Thank you very much for your attention.